Blue's Gearhulk, the Torrential Gearhulk, is basically just an oversized Snapcaster Mage where you don't even have to pay the spell's mana cost. I've always liked Snapcaster Mage, but honestly, I feel like when you just make them really large and trade the fact that you have to pay for the cost with having it for free, it kind of leads to a big debate of what is actually better. Of course, for efficiency, Snapcaster Mage is obviously better, but I feel like this will see some play in some decks as well. It's nice because you can put all your mana into your creature and not have to worry about paying for the spell's cost. For all you artifact lovers who like to play long grindy games, Metallurgic Summonings may just be the perfect card for you. Every artifact you play from here on out will give you a cute little artifact pet equal to its converted mana cost. In addition, you can also recall all of your instants and sorceries if you control double Metalcraft. Although I figure that decks that would benefit from something like this wouldn't run too many instants or sorceries, but you never know. It could happen, and it's a nice benefit in addition. Honestly, I kind of feel like this, if you really wanted to, could see a home in Vintage, although it's kind of pushing it, and honestly, I feel like even though it's easy to ramp in Vintage with all the Moxen and other things that give extra mana, I don't really think that having a whole bunch of zero-cost artifacts will really benefit this too much, even though there are a lot of cards that do synergize with artifacts in Vintage. But then again, it would be sweet to get back your Time Walk again, wouldn't it? Seriously, can't we just get a good solid spell for 5 mana that just says, gain control of target creature, no drawbacks, it's 5 mana. And the neat thing about Confiscation Coop is you can get in control of artifacts too if you want, but seriously, why do we have to have so many gimmicks and games? There's so many little things in this game that just have no drawbacks whatsoever, so if I'm paying more mana for something that does have a drawback, why would I want to play it? Why do I have to pay additional resources to get what I want to do? It just doesn't make any sense. There's a reason why Mind Control was just A-okay, and we didn't have to worry about any drawbacks or anything like that. The drawback for Mind Control is that once you have it on there, it can be removed by some sort of enchantment removal, or if the creature ever goes back to its owner's hand. Although 4 energy counters is quite a lot, it may not be that good outside of anything but draft. So in addition to having creatures that counter a board wipe if you sacrifice them, we now have instants that counter board wipes and give you a bunch of cards equal to the amount of permanence you save. Seriously, Wizards, what is the deal with all these anti-board wipe cards? Granted, I actually am a fan of this card just because it gives you additional cards, and I like drawing cards. But seriously, what's with the board wipe hate? I don't think that all of it is necessary, considering there's just so much of it. So just stop with it. There's just no need to have so much hate on control players. I think you've made your point already. Although 4 mana hard counters really don't see too much play unless there's a really big additional boost from that spell or the addition for versatility, Insidious Will may actually fall into that category, as not only can you counter the spell, but you can copy it or even redirect it to something else. This might be nice in Modern when going up against spells like Abrupt Decay or Slaughter Games, as you can redirect them back to something else that your opponent may not want to destroy or target. In short, this spell does have a lot of potential. It may not see too much play in Standard, but outside of that, it's actually quite nice, as you can play around other spells that normally would not be countered. The first card that was ever spoiled from this set was Shahili's Artistry, which honestly I feel like is a little underwhelming for the amount of mana you put into it. Although getting a clone for 6 mana can be good sometimes, usually the spells that do cost 6 mana that give you a clone or something usually have a very big benefit, like the ability to cast it again. This spell does give you a copy of a creature and a copy of an artifact if you want. So unless that card is an artifact creature that you're copying, you're not going to get 2 copies of it. Honestly, I feel like this is probably one of the worst clones for 6 mana, but I don't think it's terrible. It is a clone, and if you know you do need an additional clone, then it will be good in your EDH deck. As if your Orthopters and Servos needed to be any bigger, we thought, hey, let's give them hexproof too. Padim, the Council of Innovation, will not only shield your artifacts from all your opponent's nasty spells, but will give yourself a lot more cards if you control the biggest artifact on the table. I feel like this will probably be the general in someone's EDH deck someday, but honestly, I feel like that it may be more of a just for fun kind of thing. Either that or you're going to have to make a lot of equipments to make him a lot bigger. The good news is those equipments will have hexproof, so I'm sure that in turn he will protect those equipments, and in some sense those equipments will protect him. Moving on to the uncommons, the Glutnest Crane. really seems a lot like the classic Augur of Bolas card, except it only does artifacts. While artifacts may not be the card everyone wants or considers about talking about when they do want to have a deck with card advantage, I'm sure it will have a home somewhere. It's definitely a playable card and will block things early in the game. Moving on to more gimmicky things, we have the Era of Innovation, which, although 15 years ago we had Standstill, which only gave us 3 cards when our opponent played a spell, this thing has so many gimmicks, it's just not even funny. I mean, it's only 3 cards, and considering we're essentially playing 5 mana, if not more, considering we were playing Thopters and Artifacts. Honestly, I think this would make more sense if it was draw 6 cards. Seriously, with the amount of mana we put into this, it's just not even funny. I would honestly just rather play Glimmer of Genius. Cards like this have seen play in Standard before, and getting energy cards and a Scry as well just is terrific. I feel like this will see some play in Standard. Moving further down the power level spiral, we now have Select for Inspection. While a card like Unsummon or even, Vapor Snag would have been completely acceptable 5 or 8 years ago, this is just nuts. Why does there have to be so many drawbacks? Although, you could probably bounce an attacking creature, which is very true. Why do we have to have so many drawbacks? I mean, there are cards like this that have been printed that were so powerful. Why? Why is it like this? Why does Wizards think that having all these restrictions on all these cards will benefit us? It just doesn't make any sense. And seriously, what makes you think that? What makes you think that? We also got Revolutionary Rebuff, and although this will probably see some play in Standard as a nice efficient counterspell, similar to the Bane of Mana Leak, we have to keep in mind that there's a lot wrong with it as well. Miscalculate was a much more powerful spell in a similar vein, and this just kinda doesn't really cut it to that point. Although Miscalculate was a very, very powerful spell, and this would have just been fine if it just said counter target spell if its controller paid 2. You didn't have to have that non-artifact clause, considering there are probably going to be artifacts everywhere in Standard for the next, year or so. Another thing I realized is while Blue does have some cards that do give us energy counters, a lot of them do have to have a lot of energy to really make their abilities work. Take this Minister of Inquiries. Unless you're playing a format that's not limited, you're going to need a lot of energy to really make this thing work. You're probably just better off playing a standard mill deck that you see in Modern or some other format, considering a lot of other cards in Blue don't rely on the same synergy of milling your opponent to death that do give you energy counters. Rather than ever having the thought of reprinting Mind Control for a set like this, which could have been flavorful, we have Windrake, which I guess is a classic card, and that's nice. But we also have the return of Aether Tradewinds. Honestly, this card isn't terrible, it's just nothing completely out of the ordinary. There are going to be scenarios where you are going to want to bounce one of your creatures and one of your opponent's creatures to recover your triggered ability upon entering the battlefield. Wow, that crab really powers out a lot of energy. Guess he must have like a nuclear reactor underneath his shell or something.